What does it take for a poor immigrant boy to become one of the richest men in history? This is the story of Andrew Carnegie, a man who built a steel empire that shaped modern America and then spent the rest of his life trying to redefine what wealth truly means. Andrew Carnegie was born in 1835 in Dunfermline, Scotland, into a struggling working-class family. His father was a handloom weaver, a skilled profession that had supported families for generations. But during Carnegie's childhood, the Industrial Revolution began to change everything. Machines replaced traditional weaving, and suddenly his father's skills were no longer valuable. The family fell into poverty, and survival became uncertain. The Carnegie family made a bold and risky decision. They left Scotland and emigrated to the United States, hoping for a better life. When they arrived in Pennsylvania, they were still poor, still struggling, and still fighting to survive. At just 13 years old, Andrew Carnegie began working in a cotton factory. The job was exhausting, the hours were long, and the pay was minimal. For many, this would have been a dead end. Soon he got an opportunity that would change his life. He became a telegraph messenger boy. While delivering messages, Carnegie became fascinated with the telegraph system. Instead of doing only what was required, he pushed himself further. He began memorizing signals and practicing constantly until he could understand telegraph messages just by listening to the sounds. His talent caught the attention of Thomas Scott, a powerful railroad executive. This moment was one of the most important turning points in Carnegie's life. Scott became his mentor and introduced him to the world of business, investments, and strategic thinking. During the American Civil War, Carnegie worked closely with the railroad industry. He began to understand that the future of America would depend on infrastructure, and infrastructure would depend on materials that were strong, reliable, and scalable. That material was steel. After the war, Carnegie made a bold move. He left the railroad industry and entered the steel business. At the time, this was a risky decision, but Carnegie believed that steel would be the foundation of future growth. Railroads, bridges, buildings, and cities would all depend on it. Carnegie approached the steel industry with a clear strategy. He adopted new technologies that allowed steel to be produced faster and more efficiently. He focused on cutting costs and maximizing output. Most importantly, he built a system where he controlled every stage of production, from raw materials like iron ore, to transportation through railroads, to the final manufacturing process. Everything was under his control. This strategy, known as vertical integration, allowed him to dominate the industry. By the 1890s, Carnegie Steel had become the largest and most profitable steel company in the world. His factories were producing more steel than the entire country of Great Britain. Carnegie had achieved what seemed impossible. He had risen from poverty to become one of the richest men alive. But success at this scale came with serious consequences. Inside Carnegie's factories, working conditions were extremely harsh. Employees worked long hours in dangerous environments for relatively low wages. The pressure to maximize efficiency often came at the cost of worker safety and well-being. Tensions between workers and management began to grow. In 1892, those tensions exploded into one of the most famous labor conflicts in American history, the Homestead Strike. Workers demanded better wages and safer conditions, but the company responded aggressively. Armed guards were brought in, and violent clashes broke out between workers and security forces. Several people were killed and many were injured. Although Carnegie himself was not physically present during the strike, the event damaged his reputation. Critics argued that his pursuit of profit came at the expense of his workers. Supporters, however, continued to view him as a brilliant industrialist who had transformed an entire industry. This contradiction became central to Carnegie's legacy. He was both admired and criticized, respected and questioned. In 1901, at the height of his success, Carnegie made a decision that shocked the business world. He sold his steel company for $480 million, an amount so large that it made him one of the richest individuals in history. Instead of continuing to expand his empire, he chose to step away from business entirely. What he did next was even more surprising. Carnegie believed that wealth came with a moral responsibility. He argued that the rich had a duty to use their money to benefit society. He famously stated that the man who dies rich dies disgraced. This belief became the foundation of his philosophy, often referred to as the gospel of wealth. Rather than passing his fortune down or holding on to it, Carnegie began giving it away on a massive scale. Over the course of his life, He donated more than $350 million. He funded over 2,500 libraries around the world, believing that access to knowledge could change lives. He supported universities, scientific research, and educational institutions. His goal was not just to give money, but to create opportunities for others to improve themselves. Despite his generosity, debates about his legacy continue. Some view him as a visionary who used his wealth to create lasting positive change. Others argue that his philanthropy does not erase the suffering experienced by workers during his rise to power. Andrew Carnegie's life is not a simple story of success. It is a story of ambition, strategy, conflict, and transformation. It forces us to ask difficult questions about wealth, power, and responsibility. Can great success be achieved without sacrifice? Do the ends justify the means? And what responsibility comes with extreme wealth? Carnegie's journey from a poor immigrant boy to a global industrial leader shows what is possible through vision and determination. But his story also reminds us that success is rarely perfect and legacy is often complicated. In the end, Andrew Carnegie did more than build a steel empire. He changed how people think about wealth and its purpose. And perhaps that is why his story still matters today.